Hey, welcome to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, your host. Great show in store for you, so stick around. You know that old saying, the psychologists at least made it an old saying, unfamiliar object in a familiar context, or vice versa. That's kind of the theme for today. Rick Van Etten will join us. You remember him as the editor of Gundog magazine, but what you don't know about him, well, I'll let him tell you the story, literally and figuratively. Of course, all the usual stuff that will help you become a better dog owner, bird hunter, and even a shooter, from dog handling and training advice to places to go that cost you nothing but boot leather. It's all coming up on the Upland Nation podcast. We are outfitted by Cabela's as usual. I'm sitting here in all Cabela's gear. Well, not all Cabela. Yeah, I still don't wear their underwear. I don't even know if they make underwear, but everything else is got the logo on it, and I'm appreciative of that and of all our sponsors who give us the time and resources to bring you this podcast. We have got a lot to cover. I promised you an update on Flick's backsliding, thanks to me, of course, and where we were going from there. We've had that setback on steadiness. Well, we're back on track, and in fact have moved forward since then in a lot of ways, and I have witnesses so I can prove it. Someday I'll show you a video. But we are training every day on all the stuff that matters to you and me and everybody else who loves bird dogs and loves bird hunting. Lots in the news, including this proposal in South Dakota to move the starting time for the first week of the season from noon, which it used to be, to 10 a.m. The rest of the season, it's 10 a.m. anyway, but that'd give everybody an extra 2 hours. And, as a visitor to South Dakota a lot, I see some real logic in that, even if it's just from a perception standpoint. You want to drive all the way down there and you can't even get out of the truck until noon. Well, a couple more hours, you may not shoot a few more birds, but at least you'll be out enjoying the great places and great faces of South Dakota, to steal their advertising slogan. It'd be interesting to see how that works. And then, of course, the increase in the daily bag limit towards the end of the season, not this year, but next year, 2021. Go from 3 to 4 birds a day the last 2 months of the season, I think it'd be. We'll see how that all works. You got any feelings on that? I'm talking about it on the Facebook page right now. So voice your opinion. Not that I have anybody's ear in South Dakota, but it always helps to know rather than to not know. All right, Sage and Breaker Gun Care products are crafted at the highest caliber. They've been with us since the very beginning, and I do appreciate that. Some quick reminders: get the catalog by signing up for their mailing list. You'll always get free shipping, and you will know about all the good stuff, the new stuff, and there's a whole raft of new gear coming online. You'll know it before everybody else, and the reason I urge you to do that is it often sells out. That first production run is gone before you know it, unless you've signed up for the mailing list. And Dogtra is our collar sponsor. I am particularly happy with their T&B dual collar system. 2 collars, 2 dogs, or 2 collars, 1 dog, 1 handheld device with 2 sets of buttons. You don't have to fight a touch screen or anything like that. Sure appreciate all aspects of that when I'm trained in Flick, and you will someday on the television show, you will see him in action. In the meanwhile, like I said, without further ado, Rick Van Etten joins me on the line from somewhere over in Iowa. Rick, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Scott. Thanks. Good to be here.
Last time we talked, you had just retired as editor of Gundog magazine. And as they say, no rest for the wicked, eh?
Something like that, yeah. I retired a little over a year ago. It was March of last year. So, just a little over a year ago. And that gave me the opportunity to finish a project that I had actually started several years earlier. I had started kind of noodling around on a novel. And when I retired, I thought, okay, no more excuses. Let's get this thing done.
Yeah, that is so true. And you know, it's funny. We used to joke about it when I was in the newspaper business, the magazine business, the PR business before that. Everybody who knew how to type had a novel in the lower right-hand desk drawer.
Absolutely.
Now it's in a folder somewhere in the Ethernet instead, but it's still there. So what was the impetus for even thinking about writing a novel?
I guess I'd have to say that was one item still on my bucket list that I just, really wanted to check off. I mean, I was in the magazine business for close to 25 years, 20 years as editor of Gundog, and of course, during that time, I cranked out probably hundreds of, magazine features and editorial columns, but I never had written a book, and that was something I guess I wanted to prove to myself that I could, produce a book-length manuscript and get it into print. So that was, the primary motivation. Just something I kind of felt like I needed to do. One more thing, I wanted to accomplish.
A lot of listeners have a bucket list of bird species, for example, or places to go and which states you want to hunt in. And those of us who know how to type have that novel on our list. I've done a couple books, as you know, and so congratulations. I know what a chore it can be. And it's a great book, and we're going to talk a lot about it. By the way, the name of the book, the title is The Killer in the Woods, and it hits near and dear to home for a whole bunch of us, for a whole bunch of reasons, and we'll get to that. I promise you we will. But first, now that you've been retired for a while, did you find yourself able to actually go hunting more?
I did. I have to admit, I'm getting to the age where I have to kind of pace myself, and my dog is too. She's about an 8.5-year-old field-bred Irish setter, and we go out. Now that I'm retired, we can get out several times a week, but I do have to kind of watch her pace and my own. We enjoyed a pretty good season last year. We got out quite a bit. Unfortunately, birds were kind of scarce, but we got out as much as possible, and it's nice to just have the freedom to be able to set your own pace and not have to worry about getting home and getting back on the computer with a looming deadline and that sort of thing to worry about. I think we're enjoying, kind of a more leisurely lifestyle now, and that includes the hunting as well. I don't feel like I have to cram it into a certain time slot.
Yeah, and I can relate to that. I'm nowhere near retired. I'll never be able to afford to retire, but I do know that feeling. It's really more about quality than quantity often when I go as well. And
right.
And and if you're a one dog hunter, there's that aspect as well. Whether your dog is 12 or 3 like mine, you still got to kind of husband your dog's energy, don't you?
Exactly. And my own. I mean, my old arthritic knees, they let me know after a couple hours or so that maybe it's time to start kind of thinking about circling back to the truck. So,
well, there's a podcast with all of the geezers that I know, including me. Let's talk about all the things we do to help our knees make it through that one last chucker hunt.
Exactly.
Well, but practically speaking, tell me, just by the way, you're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. I'm Scott Linden, the host. That's Rick Van Etten, former Gundog magazine editor and now novelist. The name of the book is The Killer in the Woods. We're just about ready to start on that because, well, you'll see why in a minute. But I love it. How are you managing your old dog these days? What are you putting in your dog's mouth? What are you doing to kind of make sure that dog stays as healthy as possible?
Well, I feed her a good quality food. I've kind of experimented over the years, and I I feed her a good quality food. I certainly don't believe in cutting corners there. And she's also on a glucosamine supplement. She started limping a couple of years ago, and I took her in for x-rays, her right foreleg, and they found some bone spurs and arthritis in the wrist joint of her front foreleg, and they recommended a supplement and some painkillers. And so I've kept her on the supplement, and it seems to manage it pretty well. The other thing the vet told me was to stop letting her jump into and out of the SUV. He said, that jar when they hit the ground and also when they spring up off the back legs, he said that's pretty tough. And the older they get, the more stress that puts on those joints. So I ordered a little lightweight ramp that I keep in the back seat, and we've just made that part of the routine now. Whenever I load her up, I unfold that ramp, and it only took a couple of trial runs in the driveway for her to get used to it. And now, if I don't put it in place, she stands there and looks at me like, come on, get with the program. So, that kind of thing. And just, I guess, common sense, like I said, kind of recognizing that we're both, neither one of us is a youngster anymore, and we kind of have to pace ourselves and not push ourselves, beyond the limits. Yeah. I kind of learned to watch for that, and I can tell in the field when she's, starting to slow down, starting to flag, and I'm not going to push her beyond her limit. She'd probably do it, but I don't want to do that to her.
And when I had her on the podcast, she said the same thing about you.
Probably emphasizing that I don't get around as well as I used to.
Thank goodness she doesn't have to put a ramp up for you yet.
Yeah.
You're a rare breed anyway, Rick, in that you're a magazine editor that actually lived through the promise and wrote a dang novel, but also because you're hunting with a red dog.
Right.
I mean, how'd you get to that point in life? I mean, were you just desperate, or somebody make an offer you couldn't refuse, or what?
I've been asked that quite a few times over the years, as you can imagine. It goes back to, childhood, young adulthood. I read, like so many baby boomers, I read all of Jim Kyle-Gard's Big Red stories, and I just happened to start with Irish setters, and I've kind of stayed with them. Everybody who knows me knows that my personal gun dogs have always been field-bred Irish setters. And, as the old saying goes, if you're born Chevy, you don't die Ford. And I guess that's kind of why I've stuck with them. They seem to suit me pretty well personality-wise. But that's not to say I can't appreciate other breeds. I mean, as gun dog editor, I had the opportunity to hunt over, probably almost every one of the major breeds that we know in North America, and I've seen an awful lot of good dogs over the years. So, but yeah, you're right. I mean, my choice is a little bit off the beaten track. So
it could be worse. You could have gone with Espagnol Bretons or something crazy like that.
Yeah.
But
at least I've got a dog. You can pronounce the breed. I've come across some that I have to ask them, say that again. What's it called?
Yeah, thank goodness for Google Translate.
Exactly. Yes.
Well,
exactly.
And I don't want to rag on you because in your novelistic life you've actually come around to the right side in terms of dog breeds. But I'm gonna let you explain all that.
I knew this was going to come up.
Once more, Rick Van Etten is the author of the new novel, The Killer in the Woods. Well, I'll let you describe it because you're better at it than everybody except maybe Dave Carty, who wrote a great blurb for you on the jacket. But why don't you give us the gist of it?
Well, synopsis, my main character is an ordinary guy, an average guy. He's a magazine editor, and I will cop to some autobiographical elements, but he's the editor of an outdoor magazine, and he's probably a few years younger than I am. But he moonlights as a hitman, and he's motivated not so much by money, but the fact that he just can't abide bullies and injustice. He likes to try to right wrongs, balance the scales of justice, and people occasionally hire him to do that. I think the thing that sets him apart from some of the other popular characters nowadays is that he is just kind of an ordinary guy, and that was something that I really wanted to kind of key in on. He's not some invincible combat veteran or ex-CIA agent, with martial arts skills and access to a lot of high-tech weaponry. He's just an average sort of guy, but he does this, he's driven to do this by his sense of justice. And it's because he's kind of an ordinary guy that, he can kind of do what he does and stay below radar, get away with it. He hunts with a German wire-haired pointer, which I know is a breed very near and dear to you, Scott.
The only reason I read the book.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. I settled on that breed rather than an Irish setter because I thought it was probably more in keeping with the character. Robert Vance, the main character, German wirehairs, if I'm not mistaken, they have kind of a take no prisoners attitude when they're in the field, and I thought that was maybe a little more fitting for my guy as opposed to, say, the happy-go-lucky personality of an Irish setter. So,
by the way, I love that aspect. I hadn't even thought about that, but now that is where the art of novel writing comes in. You do set the stage very well, and the story is it is a page turner. I just got to tell you,
thank you.
There's enough what I'll call everyday detail and charm to the setting, and then the plot twists that is probably what makes it best. I don't want to give too much away. I'll let you go as deep as you want into all of that. But basically, it is a story about a hitman and an assignment fundamentally, and it gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and the moral quandaries also pile up, don't they? I mean, how do you start something like that? Do you come up with do you start at the end and then fill in the blanks, or do you start in the middle and just see where it goes like Hemingway did?
Kind of a little of both. I started with the character pretty well in mind. As I said, I set out to make him kind of an ordinary guy, and I think it was Mark Twain whose advice to aspiring writers was write what you know. And, I followed that. I mean, I made my guy a magazine editor because I know magazine work, and I thought that's about as ordinary a job as you can imagine. I made him a bird hunter, an outdoors guy, because that, again, is something I know about. I want to assure everyone the hitman stuff is pure fiction, though. I occasionally get asked about that. That part's pure fiction. But I wanted to, I wanted to kind of explore that, as you said, the moral quandary, a guy who, on the one hand, he's an idealistic sportsman. I mean, he very definitely believes in the rules of fair chase, and he does his best to adhere to those rules. But on the other hand, he's kind of a cold-blooded vigilante when the need arises or when he takes an assignment. But he feels justified in what he's doing because, the people that become his targets are, pretty bad characters. That was a little bit of a dilemma for me. I thought, well, can you really justify that? And that was, I had a little fun with that, playing around with that. And and in the course of the novel, I think you see that the main character, Vance, even questions that from time to time. He kind of goes into these, self-doubting sessions where he's asking, am I on the right track here? Am I doing what I need to be doing? And it was kind of fun to explore that and try to resolve it. In a believable way.
Well, your protagonist has 5 rules for contract killings. I'm not going to go through them all, but number 2 is no collateral damage. In other words, I doubt he would ever use an AK-47 on full auto because somebody else might get hit too. It's all about being surgical, if you will, and that, I think that says a lot about the character, or if, pardon the pun, the character of the character in that regard. And we're just getting warmed up, but you're going to get to take a break for a moment. Rick Van Etten, the author of the book. The book is called The Killer in the Woods. I'm Scott Linden. I'm the author of, I am the host of the Upland Nation podcast. Rick, put your feet up for a moment while I pay the bills around here.
Okay, will do.
Including telling you all about Dr. Tim's performance dog food. DRTIMS.com is where you get more information. These days, if you're having trouble with those other guys and their automatic deliveries, the schedule online and all that baloney because they're having problems with keeping stuff in stock, hey, just buy direct from Dr. Tim's. I do, and I got 30% off my first order, and so will you. Just use the code Upland Nation at checkout. The other thing I like about Dr. Tim's, the bags are still 40 pounds. I mean, your FedEx guy's not going to like that, but you're going to love it because you're getting great value for your dollar. The best food you can find, endorsed and approved by dogfoodadvisor.com. Remember, you can get it delivered at whatever schedule you like. Just go to drtims.com. And if you heard that message, then your hearing is still doing okay. If you want to protect it for a long, long time, go to espamerica.com. Jack Homa and the boys over there at Electronic Shooters Protection will get you fitted locally for the best digital hearing protection devices you can find. No need to go to a sportsman's show or leave town or anything else. Just go to the dealer locator page at espamerica.com. Tell them you're going to buy from ESP. They'll do all the fitting for you in the privacy of their secret, non-disclosed location. No, your audiologist's office right there in town. espamerica.com. And the continuing saga of Flick and others, and what I've learned training them in our Handle It segment, so that you don't have to learn the hard way. And in this time, these uncertain times, as they call it, you wonder about things like this. Now, I wrote about this years ago in my book, and it's still true. In fact, I still ask everybody I see with sunglasses on a hunt or at a training day or at a hunt test, when you wear sunglasses, does your dog understand you as well as when you don't wear them? And the universal answer is, I never thought about that. Well, now what are we forced to wear on so many occasions? A face mask. Now, if that's not the biggest pair of sunglasses your dog has ever seen, even though he can't realize that it's in the wrong place, you just got to wonder if he is confused yet again by something on your face that makes you look like a space alien or a giant bug. So when you are training, whenever possible, and you know that's most of the time, consider taking that mask off if you put it on at all for that. It's certainly worth the time and the effort. All right. So with that in mind, the author of the book, The Killer in the Woods, Rick Van Etten, are you still there, or did you give up on me?
No, I'm still here.
Oh, good. All right. Would you agree that a mask might actually be kind of weird for a dog to comprehend?
I hadn't thought of that until I just heard you talking about it, but that makes a lot of sense because I think, haven't they done some recent studies that, I mean, really focusing on how well dogs read our expressions? And I mean, they're much better at it than we ever realized. And sure, a mask would definitely work against that. Yeah.
Yeah, we say the eyes are the window to our soul, and the dog can't see our eyes when we got sunglasses on. Can you imagine what that big opening below our eyes and our nose does in the way, like you said, of even nonverbal communication?
Right.
So,
right.
And if you read enough books, especially like the obedience and the agility and the fly ball trainer types and all of that, they're all about praising with a smile in your voice and using your, all of this.
Sure.
I get it.
Sure.
I get that completely.
Yeah.
So anyway, enough about that. Now let's get deeper into the book because it is fascinating in so many ways. I like the fact that you go hunting in this book, and I can't help but think that actually one of the places you went hunting, I've been to. Well,
Vance spends some time at a hunting lodge, and I based it, as I'm sure you guessed, I based it on several places that I've been over the years, and I kind of cobbled together a composite there, and the safety speech that the guide gives before they head out. I mean, I've heard that, and so have you. Variations of that speech over the years. I wanted to make it as authentic as I could, and bring in a lot of those details. One of the kindest remarks I heard, or biggest compliments, I guess I would say, was from a reader who recently said, "I'm not into hunting, but you made me want to give it a try." And I thought, oh, wow, that's pretty cool. I hadn't thought about this book as a recruiting tool, but if it functions in that manner, I'd be very happy with that.
Oh, that is a great compliment, and it kind of leads to what I was going to ask you. There's enough in there for non-hunters. There really is, isn't there?
I would hope so. I wrote this thing with definitely with an outdoor flavor in mind. So many, and this isn't a knock against them, but so many crime fiction novels are set in New York City or Los Angeles, or they just have an urban setting. And I thought, let's do something a little different. Let's set this thing in the outdoors, and make this appeal to people like ourselves, people who like the outdoors, love the outdoors, and hunt and have dogs and this kind of thing. That was kind of my intention with this. I wanted to give it a kind of a distinct Midwestern flavor also, because we have even though we're referred to as flyover country, we have our share of drama and excitement out here, and I kind of wanted to play up that as well.
Well, because I have one in the lower right-hand drawer of my desk as well, I got to ask you, what was the hardest part about putting this novel together? And I ask that because, and I say novel on purpose because, writing a dog training book or anything along those lines it's different than making up a freaking story and then having to construct all that dialogue. Was that hard? I mean, dumb question, but what was the hardest part?
The dialogue is definitely a challenge because as you're writing it, as I'm sitting here typing it, I'm actually kind of saying it, aloud, and you listen to it. I mean, basically, you're listening to it even as you're writing, and you're asking yourself in the back of your mind, you're asking, now, does this sound realistic? Does this sound like the way people talk? I mean, and you tweak it, you go back, and you kind of fine tune it a little bit so it sounds natural. That's a challenge. There's no question about that. I would say probably the single most difficult part, the biggest challenge, is getting through the middle of the book.
Okay.
I read a comment not too long ago by one of my favorite authors, John Sanford, and he was talking about the whole process. He refers to writing the middle of a novel as slogging through the swamp.
Yeah.
And he said, when you get to the middle, you just have to keep going. He said, you feel like you're getting bogged down, but you just have to make yourself keep moving forward. And I would totally agree. It's those middle chapters when, you get there and you think, oh, geez, can I really keep going? Can I get this thing, take it all the way to the end? I actually you were talking about, you said something about putting it together, and there was a certain amount of that too. There was some assembly, I guess you would say. I actually wrote the last few chapters and the epilogue before I wrote the middle. Once I got a good sense of how this thing was going to wind up, where it was going and how it was going to end, I kind of had that pretty well in mind, and finally I thought, okay, just write it. While it's fresh in your mind, go ahead and write it. So I did, and then, of course, I had to go back and fill in all the chapters that led up to it, and that's a challenge, too, because you have to be sure you don't leave out something critical. You have to make sure everything connects and that everything flows together properly in sequence.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. And some of the, even some of the bigger authors sometimes will slip, and one of the subordinate characters will have a new name in the second half of the book.
Right.
So all those details, you look at some of the TV renditions of a novelist, and he's got the cork board with the 45 cards and the strings going from one to the other. All that stuff starts to make a lot more sense if you're ever trying to write a book like that, I'm sure.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to. And I had a couple of people read it. Actually, in fact, one of them was my cousin, Randy Clark. I think you know him.
By the way, he says hello. Yeah.
He was my first reader. I would finish a chapter and email it to him and get his thoughts. And there were several times he pointed out, that he said, hey, this doesn't quite fit with something you said back in chapter such and such. He says you need to tweak this a little bit. So it was definitely helpful to, have him have his set of eyes looking at this. It's always very helpful when you get some input like that because, as you say, it can be difficult to kind of keep track of all the little details and make sure you haven't written yourself into some kind of an inconsistency or something.
In the movie business, I do a little bit of technical advising in the movie business, and they have somebody on the set all the time that handles what they call continuity. So in scene 1, if the guy's wearing a blue shirt, in scene 2 in the same place on the same day, he better keep that blue shirt on.
Right. He shouldn't be suddenly wearing a red one.
Exactly. Yeah. But that kind of stuff becomes critical, especially in a book, because people can go back 3 pages and check you on it.
Right. Exactly.
Oh my. Well, what was the most satisfying aspect of writing a mystery / crime novel? Maybe that's not quite. How do you describe if you had to boil it down to 5 words, would it be a mystery crime whodunit?
I would call it crime fiction. It's not, as you know from reading, it's not exactly a whodunit in the classic mystery sense. I mean, it's not like an Agatha Christie type thing where you're puzzling over, a whole bunch of possible suspects. It doesn't read quite like that. I'd call it a crime fiction, maybe crime thriller.
Sure.
Most satisfying part, of course, was, typing the last few words, I did it. Typing the acknowledgments at the end, when you get to thank all the people who helped you. And there were quite a few people who provided, not only reading, but they answered some questions. I had some questions that I asked of an attorney and a banker and a couple of other folks. There were a number of people who contributed to this effort. You want to try to make it, as authentic and as accurate as you possibly can. And, I had to rely on the expertise of some other folks. So writing the acknowledgments at the end was the fun part, when you finally get to say, thanks. I appreciate all your efforts.
I believe it. And it certainly shows the level of technical, detail, I guess, I would call it. It shows, and it really does make a book sing a little bit if you get all those things right. And it also helps, every bird dog owner and every bird hunter is reading that thing hoping to find you shooting a rifle in one of the bird hunting scenes.
I wouldn't make that mistake, but I know what you mean. Yeah. I think, and you have to, as the writer, you have to be conscious of that all the time. I mean, you can't afford to make a slip up like that, because if you do, your credibility just pretty much goes right out the window, and you want your readers to believe what they're reading. And that, again, that requires accuracy.
Love it. You're listening to the Upland Nation podcast. That's Rick Van Etten. He is the author of the new novel, The Killer in the Woods. I'm Scott Linden. I'm the host of this wonderful opportunity to talk about literature, such as it is. I guess we'll let the ages judge that, Rick, won't we?
Yeah.
But what has been the most surprising thing that has happened to you vis-a-vis a novel now that you've got one in the can and it's on the market and people are reading it? What's the reaction been?
The biggest surprise, and I don't mean this as some kind of underhanded boast. I really don't mean it that way. But the biggest surprise, the number of people who've told me that they found the main character to be really likable.
Yeah.
I just wasn't prepared for that. Quite honestly, when I was writing the book, I didn't really see him as being a real likable kind of guy. I saw him as more of a kind of a cranky old get off my lawn type of guy. And so the number of people who've said, oh no, I really liked him, I thought, well, geez, are we talking about the same character here? That was a surprise, but hey, I'm not going to argue with it. If they liked him, I'm fine with that. So that was a surprise and a pleasant one.
Well, congratulations, because it's absolutely true, and it jibes with observations I made 4 or 5 careers ago. I used to work in politics. I won't go into detail on that stuff, but what I would tell every candidate is people want to vote for somebody who is pretty much like them, only a little smarter and a little better looking. And right. I think you've done that. And again, I'm hearkening back to the rules. They're almost a moral code. They're not all moral code, never use the same handgun twice. I mean, that's just, I mean, if you're going to do something illegal, that's probably just a given.
Right. That's common sense.
But the guy is doing things in a way that most hitmen don't do things. And that's we can relate to that a little bit. There's a human side to the hitman.
Well, and I kind of set it up that way because, as I said, I didn't want him to just be some, totally ruthless, cold-blooded, money-hungry type person. I wanted him to be doing this for the quote right reasons, or at least right according to his way of thinking. Another reader, a friend who is, by her own admission, really not into guns and that kind of thing. She said, I asked her if she had any problem with any of that, and she says, oh no. She said, you've tapped into everybody's favorite fantasy. Yeah. And I said, what's that? And she said, everybody wants to see a bully get their comeuppance. And she said, this guy delivers. She said, we all fantasize about doing that. And I was surprised because the person who was saying this, is not someone you would ordinarily think of. She's just not that way. But she said, we all fantasize about doing this, making things right. So
yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I think she was absolutely right. I hadn't thought about it until just now. But what kind of person wouldn't want that?
Right.
Not somebody I want to know, but
exactly.
There is that deep-seated psychological need, and you are meeting it in one way or another. Now, I don't want to get too much farther into the plot because we'll be revealing too much, but I got to tell you, the ending kind of threw me for a couple of reasons, and I'll let you take it from there, and you don't give away any of the good stuff, but it's different than I thought it would be.
Others have commented on the same thing. They've said, "Boy, I didn't quite expect that to end quite like that," or And again, I don't want to give too much away here. That was kind of a late development. I will confess to that. I was getting, as I said before, I kind of wrote the ending before I wrote the middle of the book, and it just kind of came to me, I guess you'd say inspiration. I thought, hey, let's do this. Let's put a little final twist on here that nobody hopefully saw coming. And I had a little fun with that.
Well, you did a great job on it. Rick Van Etten is the author of The Killer in the Woods, a new novel that involves German wire-haired pointers and some other stuff. A hitman who's a magazine editor, and the psychologist would have a field day with all of that too. They're reading between all the lines in there, Rick. So prepare to be psychoanalyzed.
I'm sure. Yeah.
But it is a great book. Where can we find it? And do you have a website for it?
I do have a website. It's proudpointpress.com. Proudpointpress.com. It's available on Amazon, either as a paperback or as an ebook. You can order it directly.
Great, and
it's available now.
Yeah, and I think the price is right there, $9.99 for a hard copy. It's a paperback, of course, but $10 for a book, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah, I thought so. And it's not, and it's, we talked a little earlier, it's a quick read. It was meant to be entertaining. Yeah. I mean, it was, it was kind of a fun exercise for me, and I hope that people would have fun reading it. You sometimes hear these books referred to as airport novels. They're the kind of thing you buy in the airport gift shop when you need something to read on a 2-hour flight. And that's really what I intended. I hope people would, read it, have fun with it, enjoy it. And so there it is.
Well, good job. It was a most enjoyable read. I recommend it to everybody I talk about. And it's always good to talk with you, and it's always good to talk about Randy. He's got a new puppy now.
He stopped by last week on his way home from Minnesota. He stopped here in Des Moines, and I got to play with her in the backyard for a little while, and she is a beauty. Yeah,
I can't wait to see her
puppy, and she's just a beauty.
All right, enough insider information there. I'm sorry, everybody, but that's how it goes sometimes when puppies enter the equation. Rick Van Etten. The title one more time, The Killer in the Woods. You can get more information at proudpointpress.com. Thank you so much for being a part of the Upland Nation podcast.
Thank you, Scott.
And with that, Rick will say goodbye, and I will say hello, because we've got a lot more to talk about, including an interesting place to go for an interesting subspecies of a species that is dominating my mind these days. This land is your land segment coming up. But first, let's talk dog kennels. Maybe you've seen some of the videos I've been doing these days for everybody on all sorts of stuff. But Gunner Kennels are my kennel of choice. Gunner.com is where you learn more about them. Yeah, they're expensive, but you can finance them. And how much is your dog worth? Those are the two questions I need to answer for almost everything I do. And usually the dog trumps everything. They are the safest kennel, 1,200 5-star reviews. Go to the website, watch some of the videos. You'll see why. They'll ship it free. Like I said, they'll finance it for you. Take the Fit Finder quiz. Try the augmented reality app. You can even crowdsource the size of your kennel. Talk to other folks who've got the same dog at the same weight and find out what they all used. It's all at gunner.com. Go there, tell them I sent you. And then go to Dogtra.com and take a look at that T&B dual collar system. You'll get 10% off if you use the code SLUN10. Free shipping on everything over $200, no matter what collar choice or any other piece of equipment you need. It's all at Dogtra.com. No toggling on the T&B dual. You don't have to use a touchscreen. You got 2 sets of buttons, one for the green collar and one for the orange collar. You got tone, vibrate, beep, stimulate. I love the vibrate function. Flick he's such a big baby. He can't take the stimulation at any level, so we're using that vibrate all the time. And it, by the way, it does work. So I'm grateful to Dogtra, and you will be too, especially when you take that 10% off with the code SLUN10. It's all at Dogtra.com. Yeah, I think I told you, probably bored you with the story. Last season, I hunted all wild birds in all wild places, public access all over the West. Going back and doing it again this year. One of the places on my short list, if I stand on the roof and lean to the right, I can almost see eastern Idaho. Arbonne Valley and the Malad country are good areas to go for Idaho sharp-tailed grouse. It's a subspecies found nowhere else, and you can still hunt them. They're found on private CRP grounds that are available to us and some public land in southeast Idaho. One place I'm going to start, the Tex Creek Wildlife Management Area, and then the Curlew National Grasslands. That's near Malad. Now, the good part is, if you go at the right time of year, you might boost a sage grouse out of the brushy hills. If you've been over there and you can steer me straight, literally, I'd sure appreciate your reaching out to me. I'll keep your secret spots secret, or just make sure I'm not going in the opposite direction from where all the birds are. And, of course, if you want more information on that and all sorts of other places to go that cost you nothing but boot leather, go to findbirdhuntingspots.com. One of those spots would be Huron, South Dakota, where the pheasants outnumber the people. Learn more at hunthuronsd.com. And check your hearing, not at the door, but at the truck tailgate. There you go. There's my warning. ESPAmerica.com is where you can shop all the prices, all the designs, all the capabilities, all the different types of digital hearing protection available out there, all custom fitted wall-to-wall protection at ESPAmerica.com. Oh boy, what a day. What a conversation. Thank you, Rick Van Etten, the author of The Killer in the Woods. Go out and buy it today at Amazon, or go straight to proudpointpress.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for rating or reviewing the Upland Nation podcast at Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or Spotify or iHeartRadio. That gets you into the sweepstakes for that pointer shotgun. If you'd like to talk in between now and the next podcast, go to the Wing Shooting USA Facebook page or the Upland Nation Facebook page. Both checked several times a day, and I promise to respond to every question, every comment. I'm Scott Linden. I'm hoping that you're looking forward to a great hunting season. We will be out there. We will be enjoying ourselves, socially distant, but still close. Thanks again. See you next time.